Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about love,
sex,
connection,
abundance,
joy,
purpose,
peace,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves. Let's start where we've now kind of starting this season, which is, can you explain to me who am I to judge as our subtitle?
We'll get into it because it's buried in the outline somewhere about how judgment is what sources our expectations, and expectations are what cause our deep, profound disappointments in life and often keep us out of our power. We need the freedom for magic. So that's how they come together, and we'll be able to explain that as we go through.
Okay. In season 11, which we've made no secret of, was a bit of a strange season for us because it was the container season of everything and involved us going back in time and forward in time. I ended up feeling, bliss, cool, but a bit funny because it felt like we were throwing love under the bus.
I mean,
and
to
there
be
were a couple
fair,
of episodes where we kind of said love and the pursuit of happiness are a bit of a sticking point, the convergence of them, right? So we effectively said that one doesn't really have to do with the other, and that love at some point stops being relevant-ish. So I'm really glad we're doing this episode because I feel like I need to really unpack that a little bit and just understand, because it felt like it kind of knocked me a little bit.
Rhea, we joke that we are one-trick ponies, but the reality is that, I mean, in some ways we are, because there's always a clear line in our fates, right? But at the same time, we wouldn't be who we are if we didn't offer the most expanded notions and explanations around everything. So sometimes there just isn't a place for love, just like there isn't always going to be a place for karma, or you know what I mean? So I'm like in defense of those episodes.
No, I mean, yeah, fair. But I'm excited to kind of, because obviously in these episodes, we've been discussing how magic cannot exist without love.
Yes. Which is super exciting for you.
It just really, like, I needed it. But I also now need to understand it so that I can turn around in 2 days' time and say, I just had this big realization. And you can tell me that I've known it already. And I just didn't click.
Fair enough. And really one of the biggest sticking points that we have in our pursuit of happiness is love, capital L love, right? The soul shining our light for others to see. Well, we always believe it involves other people.
Exactly.
The reality, it does not, but we have attached such significance insofar as love and relationship goes that we are very preoccupied with how to get it, how to be in it, what to do when we have it. It's in itself its own economy when you really think about it.
No, of course. And when you think about it, you know, that it's all the stuff of it, like within your karma, we all know that, loads of seasons. Outside of your karma, we also have a whole season. My first favorite season. But
super sad. So many seasons later. All those
true.
other sad seasons.
But, you know, it's normal. We go through until we get there, and then we get there and we get to enjoy it. But that's the point. When we do get it, or when we are in it, those patternings don't really go anywhere. And they do. And you've said this to me, you know, sometimes like I get rattled by things, and often they are around love. Because that is, as much as my heart is my strength.
It's always our Achilles heel. What is our strength is often our Achilles heel, because that's our point of growth and evolution. Yeah. Sorry, I'm using that phrase this season. I really didn't think I was going to. It didn't show up in a single outline, but it is part of that. Magic, weirdly, doesn't have a lot to do with our growth and evolution, but the elements that underpin it do. And one of those is love, capital L love.
But in this case, are we talking about love as in with other people in this?
No, but we often, because we're wired for relationship in our human nature, we will often associate and believe that relationship is required to experience love, even in that big shining our light way. Which is why it's understandable when you were talking about how even though you understand and you live from that place of big love, that when things get a little rocky in some of your relationships, you get thrown. even though love is meant to be very stable, again, because we are so wired and we carry some of that old 3D wiring around relationship, it's really difficult to not feel a little unsettled.
But I guess it's just also an experience makes normal thing, because the more you get used to seeing that even if you get thrown a bit, it all kind of works out,
Yes.
then you get less thrown out every single time it happens, because you're like, it'll all be
Precisely.
okay.
Precisely. And some of that has to do with how we learn individually.
Yeah.
What does it take for me to really understand this? Maybe I do need to experience it in many ways and unsettling ways, because that's really what drives that home for me. Yeah.
And maybe I need that, you know, to get past that time where I suddenly realize, oh, that didn't knock me out. So maybe actually that means it's not a thing anymore.
Yeah. So until we heal what keeps us out of big love, not only will we not be able to understand the true vastness of magic and all of our capabilities within that, we'll just constantly frustrate ourselves by frequently plateauing. It's like, oh, I get this. No, I don't get this. Oh, I'm here. I'm not there, right? And in doing that, what will help is really getting to the point where we can just love the fuck out of our lives. And that really makes us, as you say, want more and more and more. Where better enough stops being enough. And we can really imagine a larger world for ourselves because our smaller ones no longer fit.
And that's the thing about endings. We always assume that an end means end of relationship, end of love, end of all these things, right? That's
Which
what we've
you
been
hate
wired to
endings.
think. And so it's
love
like
endings.
So I started hating endings because I was like, oh, if it's going to end, that means it's gone. What I've learned through this work and through living my life is that what ends is the insecurities, the doubts, the shit, the things that hold us back from experiencing the purest joy of the love. So in a relationship, we experience many endings over and over again, but often they're beginnings of a new, more exciting and loving way to exist with one another. You and I have had many different endings and beginnings. Right?
Yes, very much.
And so sometimes when we think about, and as I said in the last episode, it's about getting greater and greater and greater. You think it's going to be good, well, it's going to be better, right? Then actually when it comes to those endings, what you look at, it's the ending of karma. It's the ending of insecurities. It's the ending of doubts. It's the ending of our circles. It's the endings of all the things that keep us out of love, so that we're able to understand the true vastness of who we are and what we can achieve and all the yummy stuff. And we can't have all those yummy things unless we're able to end the parts of ourselves and the parts of our relationships and how we interact with others that keep us out of it. And the thing is, we put so much pressure on love to be everything for us and everything to us, and, you know, to deliver us the freedom and the capacity to be happy.
Yes.
But
very
what
much.
I've learned is that love is the action that clears the channel for all of those things. It's not the solution to it. So love, when you exercise it in your karma through, as the foundations, trust, faith, hope, knowing, making choices, that allows you to end patterns. It allows you to break cycles. It allows you to neutralize the separation within and the polarity. It allows you to see that you can be more and experience more as a result. It's not the end goal, it's the way.
Yes.
Right? Which means that when it comes to love, our greatest enemy is ourselves.
Yeah.
We're the ones that
Absolutely.
create block to it.
And the primary block is our expectations.
Yeah, because we're expecting what it's going to look like. We're expecting what it needs to be. We're creating those stories around it. We're creating, as I said, what endings mean.
We're not just creating it, we're also abiding by what we've seen. We're also adopting what's been modeled for us, what's been in our stories, what's been, you know, around us, what these, you know, what books are telling us and how to be and how to communicate and how to get it and how to keep it. And
100%.
And so it's not just what we've made up. Yes, maybe we've creatively, you know, in crazy ways, found methods to sabotage. You know, as you say, you just found creative ways to like.
I was exceptional at it.
Yes, absolutely. But a lot of it has already been established. It precedes us, which is why in many ways and we've said in the previous episode, we also need to forgive ourselves for so many
100%.
For so many ways in which we've acted or thought, because a lot of it wasn't really us as much as it was us just trying to survive or fit in.
Like, I have this secret theory that
is it secret now? It's all going to be so secret now.
Not anymore. But at some point, there was someone who was totally living in their light and their worth, and their love relationships worked out. And so someone else was watching what they were doing, which was saying yes when they meant yes, saying no when they meant no, and created a whole bunch of, like, almost like distilled their behavior down to rules. And then we were given all those rules and said, this is how you behave in order for someone to love you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't actually, the rules weren't the point. It's like what we were saying in so far every episode about the feeling, the turning up to the room. That person, whoever it was, turned up into the room as themselves, believing they're the most beautiful person in the world, embodying it, acted that way. The world met them from that space, and those were the outcomes, right? Yeah. But if I'm going into a room following a bunch of rules, I'm actually not embodying that I'm the most beautiful person in the room. I'm embodying that someone else has told me what to do. Therefore, I'm in that reality. I'm in the reality of I need to be someone different. I need to mold myself. I need to follow some outdated judgment about what a man or a woman or a relationship or anything has to be. And in doing so, not only am I not free to be myself and show up as the most beautiful person in the room because I am the most beautiful person in the room, I then feel that I'm not because I'm having to be someone else.
Yeah. And as long as we're living according to that, it means we're living according to judgment and all the expectations that 100%. Are developed around that place of judgment. And even if we're thinking we're doing our best and we're coming from the most positive place because we've done a lot of work on ourselves, we did that special retreat, we've consulted that one expert who's going to undo it all, and we've unlocked all of our inner child issues, and we've all connected to all of that. If we are still coming from a place where we are not creating our lives in alignment with who we really are, we are still going to remain outside of that place of magic. Because we have to be able to imagine life and reality free from rules and judgment entirely.
It makes sense. It actually does make sense. Like, when I think about all my relationships in my karmic undoing, what got me out of them? Saying yes when it was batshit crazy to do so.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, you were always like, Rhea, just you do you, I've got your back kind of thing. But I'm sure secretly you were like, these dudes are like, really, like, she's scraping Los Barrelos.
Weirdly, no. I just, because I've been there.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, you were just like, nah, all right. You don't need to be friends with everyone that you sleep with. You don't need to do this. But for me, my turning up as the most beautiful person in the room was really just being myself with it all. And actually, in those brief moments where I made those choices in that process like that, I allowed myself to operate outside of judgment for myself and for how they responded to me, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why all the great things happened to me happened. And when I see now people still following the rules of I'm not going to text them first, or they must do X, Y, or Z in order to show that they're interested, or whatever else it is, I just think, how is this two individuals coming together?
It's not.
Yeah, sure. It was once upon a time, it was two individuals coming together that you've now written about. But it's not two individuals coming together. You're not individual. And you can give me, a million reasons like, oh, nowadays women are more forward, or oh, no, nowadays this or that. But for me, those are just more rules. What do you want to do?
Exactly.
And just do it.
Yeah.
The more you show up as yourself, the more people will meet you there. And the more you'll meet people who appreciate you for yourself, which is what we always wanted.
Just scary though, Rhea, to be that expanded a person. Again, we don't have a lot of models for that, and we cannot uphold those influencers or whatever we call them, and people who are out there.
No one can tell us how to be
ourselves.
ourselves.
No one can tell us, and no one can really show us, because they're not living our lives. They're not in our skin. They're not necessarily in our city. They're not in the relationships we have. We really cannot look to other people.
Yeah.
You and I will cheerlead anyone and be like, you just get your freak on, you go do whatever. Yeah. But we're not them. And it
No.
might be, the hope is that we can just inspire and enlighten.
yeah.
That's it.
And look, even you and I, right? Like, you know me extremely well. We speak constantly.
Yes.
But even then, you would not be able to tell me what to do.
No.
And not that you'd want to, but you would not be able to. Mm-mm. How are you going to know what my divine expression is in that relationship? Are you in the room with us?
Dear God, no.
Do you know the person? Do you
Please
know,
no.
we all, I'm not saying we all have different faces, but we all are ever so slightly
We have so many
different hues. Only we can know what's really going on in that relationship. Yeah. Only we can know what's going to happen. And sure, as we discussed in the previous episode, sometimes we can look back and go, oh, I didn't really know that at all. It was nowhere near as dramatic as I thought it was. Whoopsie.
Or whoops. My pass is often a, oh shit, oh whoops.
Yeah. But at the same time, I also know that those whoops have led me to a place today where I'm much more humble.
Yeah, very much. And I really think that is truly that divine value that is in that last comic book of ours. So when we are in this place of trying to figure out or eschew the rules, what we need to be is decisive. And you and I have so interesting because you and I have been talking about being, decisiveness of late. This week, it's been the big theme is I've been trying to untangle that in myself. And I've always been a very decisive person in my family.
And Guidance was saying it's world building. And now we're going to understand why. Go on.
Yes. In my case, it is. I don't know if that'll be for other people. But in my family, we were always decisive. There was no room for quibbling. There was no room for hemming and hawing ever. My father, it was just like, that's how it was in our family. So when I was told you really, this is going to be about being decisive, I thought, what the fuck? I am the most decisive person I know. My husband requires me to be decisive for him. You know, that is the basic part of our relationship. It seems a little counterintuitive because we get to this spiritual higher consciousness place of just being in flow. Because when we're in our fate, we're just sort of flowing. We're harmonizing with the vibrations in our fate, and we're just living our best lives. And we're in our pursuit of happiness. We think, well, what do I have to be decisive about? Aren't things just supposed to show up for me? I do want to say one thing, and I've been wanting to say it since episode 1, but I didn't know where it fit. But I'm going to say it now because I brought up fate. Synchronicity is not magic. Maybe I'll say it in another episode. It's just fate. It's just fate. And I think we have said it before, but is in regard to any conversation around magic, people often will associate synchronicity with magic. Oh, wow, it's this time of the day. Or, oh, wow, this happened. It's complete synchronicity.
I always see that number whenever.
Exactly.
It's
fate.
It's fate.
It's fate.
You're on
always.
Your fate.
Always.
Yeah. Which I find beautiful.
But so anyway, back to that. It's such a segue. Really sorry about that. When it comes to magic is born from our elevated knowing, which is knowing plus plus plus.
What does that mean?
So knowing is one of the pillars of trust.
Yes.
And knowing is coming from that expanded space of how do we know this, right? I just know it. And it's not necessarily wisdom. It runs deeper than that because it comes from the divine. But it shows up in our karmic realities. It shows up in many ways, little steps we take. Sometimes it'll show up as what we call intuition. And as we go through our karmic undoing process, we've ridden through hell. We are then in this place of, okay, magic is truly elevated knowing because we are sourcing the divine because we are the divine. So if we have to be in that expanded knowing, elevated knowing place,
which is, it's just that knowing where in your karmic undoing process, the knowing was like little moments of my gut told me to do this. It's that place of, let's say, it's going to get better. It's always going to get better and better and better. That is elevated knowing. It's just a fundamental knowing that is just an overriding almost fact in your life.
Precisely. It is so clear, which means you cannot operate from a place of opinion or judgment or expectation because that cuts through. That gets in the way of that. That channel. Yeah.
They should be doing this. I should be doing that. This should be happening this way.
The only way to do this would be X, which is why manifestation cannot exist in 5D.
Because manifestation is rules-based.
Very rules-based. Doesn't matter how new the interpretation is or all the I'm sorry, I was doing quotations.
I know, I realized no one could see them. This is a sound.
Fuck off. Which is why even with a quote unquote new manifestation or reinterpreted or different application of it, it doesn't matter. Anything that is rules based, as you said, anything that has a particular list of, steps, it generally will not apply in 5D.
And effectively the knowing plus plus in this case, and it's not an affirmation, it's just, I desire it, therefore I will have it.
It belongs to me. We are acknowledging the possible existence for this thing.
I might not know how, I might not know how I'm going to get it, where I'm going to get it, like the steps I need to take, but I know that it's mine. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not like just super believe it and it will happen. It's a knowing, which means it comes from inside out, not outside in.
Precisely. Belief has no place because belief, again, even if it's, as we would say, expanded belief, that's still opinion that is formed. It's still somewhat judgment based. Yeah. Being decisive cuts out all that noise. So if flow is a channel and love lights up that channel so we can just be, we cannot be really if we're just surrounded by a bunch of issues and useless thoughts and opinions. So even if it just comes from the best of intention, like the most well-intentioned place from somebody who's like, well, I figured this out and I'm just going to share it with you and you can do this too. That's still not freedom of thought. We really have to be able to carve out whatever it is that belongs to us and not someone else. So even if it's the coded words that, why somebody posted or didn't, or have to interact with somebody just to get laid, like any sort of like tricks of the trade or anything that's used to sort of influence our behavior or our actions, it cannot have a place in our magical selves.
It makes sense because if you think about it, if love is I'm shining my light, I am being unapologetically me, I am turning up in that room as the most beautiful person. Why do I feel like this is going to be the thing? But it started, it's just going to be what
our poor listeners, if we're in episode 10 and Rhea's still the most beautiful person in the room.
Well, we all are, right? But that's the point, right? But then effectively what's happening is your love is lighting up the way, right? Your love is lighting up so you can follow it and flow through it. Mm-hmm. And that's going to look unique to you. Mm-hmm. So anything that belongs to anyone else that you think, oh, but they did that, or even I did that in a previous situation and it worked, so I'm going to do it again.
Yes.
Right?
Because
anything that comes from any kind of calculation, anything that comes from that, right, isn't giving you the freedom to just allow something to unfold as it needs to unfold. And it might look whack. Like, that's the thing I'm learning. It could look whack even to me. Like, I'm doing stuff sometimes and I'm like, why am I doing this? I really should be doing it this way because that's what makes sense to me.
That would be reasonable. It would be reasonable
to me. You know, like, why am I doing it this way? This is insane. And then I berate myself. Mm-hmm. But then in berating myself, what do? I switch off the light.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I can't see where I'm flowing to next. And actually, it's, for me, when you say decisive, what that for me is it's just trust yourself. Mm-hmm. Capital really T, trust, I guess, when maybe hope will flow into this. But
because as you said, you're putting your light into it. Decisiveness creates clarity. It is not a result of our clarity. As in, oh, this is how it works. I'll go in this direction.
Interesting. I like this.
You have to be able to lean in and give that light, and that's how you can see. That's why love is so essential.
So in season 2, I think it was, we discussed how anger shows will.
Anger's beautiful.
This is what I want. And I remember
this is happening or not happening, and I'm very angry now.
Yeah. And so it shows you what you want. So that's your decisiveness. You're clear. This is what I want. Mm-hmm. But then
this is how whatever's happening is violating that.
Exactly. So then the answer is, how can I best be me in this situation? Mm-hmm. Which is shining my light, which therefore is love.
Yes. So decisiveness is exercising our knowing over and over and over again until we have that larger picture from which we can operate.
And it doesn't need to be, I want to
give a good example. I can't think of one.
I mean, mine are always going to be relationship based. I want partnership. Therefore, I am going to make all my decisions with some future outcome in mind. That's not decisiveness. The decisiveness is, I want to see this person again. I don't want to see this person again. I want to say this. I don't want to say this.
Yeah. Or
this feels right. This doesn't feel right. It's the decisiveness is in the micro. The
It
clarity
is.
is
It
also,
is.
the clarity is often in the micro because expectations are the macro. They are the macro. So if you are constantly focusing on the big, constantly focusing on the end goal, constantly focusing on where you want to go, right? You are naturally forcing so much expectation onto the now because you're needing that to take you to the there.
Yes.
Wherever it
Yes.
is.
You're not accounting for all the steps between the now and the there.
And you're creating all the expectations, what the there's going to look like.
Yes.
Guaranteed, if you're just decisive and you just like focus on one choice at a time, what will end up unfolding is something that actually you may not have seen. It could be much bigger than what you wanted.
Yeah.
It could be different, but better.
Definitely
it could be
different.
loads of things, you know?
Often very different.
Very.
Well, piggybacking on what you said, the week I met Ricardo, which was very unintentional, I didn't think, oh, I'm going to meet the man of my life this week. Ooh, it was, I think I'm ready to start dating again. I think that I would really like companionship. I'm not looking for a life partner. I was very young, but it was, like you said, it was a very simple decision and one that gave me clarity about where I was going. Now,
And that's it. Now, interesting. You
it's very
said, I'm
simple.
not looking for a life partner. Were you very clear that you weren't looking for a life partner?
No. I'm just, all I'm saying, I'm clarifying what I was thinking. Not
Yeah.
that I actually said that. I was like,
So
no,
it
I'm
wasn't
just
you were
looking
saying
for a nice companion.
You weren't
That
putting
was
any
my
boundaries
face.
on it. That's the
No,
point.
not at all.
You were
It
just
was
like,
like, I'm
I
open.
want to chill with someone. I want something steady. I want something loving. I want something supportive. I want. It was just. It was. Small.
I didn't even have that list. It was super basic.
No,
of,
but I'm just saying
ready
it
to
was
start
small.
dating again.
But I'm saying it's small.
It was super simple.
It's not,
Super
I
simple.
want someone for 7 dates and then, to do this and then to do that. Yeah, sure. Maybe you can see those things.
Yeah.
But you don't know how you're going to get there. The decisiveness and the clarity is, what do you want now?
Yes, exactly.
Because the now is what's going to take you to the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. And that's what you were saying about, then you get into that larger picture. If I'd have known when I met you where I would be today.
Oh God, we talked about that yesterday. You were like,
But we did.
if somebody
would
said,
we have done it? Yeah.
I know. No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I said if somebody had told us what we were going to go through together and what we would achieve, would we have still done it? And eventually I landed on yes because of where I am today, but no because of what I had to go through. Right?
Yeah.
But every podcast episode was another choice to turn up. Every chapter to write was another choice to turn up. Every decision I made to do anything was another choice to just turn up, show up. And then I knew what I wanted, larger picture. But I also, through our work, had to realize that actually 90% of the problem was what that larger picture looked like. So once you're free from all those expectations, once you're free, because as you said, who am I to judge? My fate is so much better and greater than the version of me can even conceive right now.
Yeah. Or because we often are relative, like we're so comparing, right? We are so prone to compare, our experiences to someone else's. Or I went to this school and therefore, my success should look like this. Or, this happened for them. And why isn't my dating life matching up to theirs? If I'm doing all the right things and I've got the same, dating profile they do. And, we are always assuming that we should be like someone else.
The more we make choices where we're clear, we start seeing where we're going. But the key is to also, we're seeing where we're going, but we're also humble enough to know that whilst we can have a feeling of the larger picture, it's still going to be even better. So we're not going to limit ourselves to what we think it could be today. We're just going to keep going.
And part of that is because our imaginations are so warped, because our minds have been very warped by separation. Yeah. The younger generations less so. But for us, we really have to take a step back and allow things to happen and show us. Because if we keep applying, even in a rather vast imagination, we're still limited. It can always be more. Because the larger picture just allows us to see what we want, what we desire, what serves us and our purpose. And what's really interesting is this week, as I've been kind of wrestling what it means to be decisive in this, whatever that means to me, a lot of that has to do with, is this a reflection of my happiness? Does this bring me joy? Is spending time with this person really going to be a joyful experience, or is it going to feel like teeth pulling? Yeah. And that's where I'm like, I don't need to do that. So the more I'm making decisions from what works for me at this particular juncture, the better I know things will get as I move forward.
It's not constant like examination or evaluation of if I do X, then Y, or if I do Z, then A. It's just simply, am I enjoying this?
Mm-hmm.
Because effectively, the more we infuse our lives with joy in the present, the more we create it for the future.
Yes.
And I know I feel, and I have to apologize to everyone listening that I'm always talking about relationships. Right? You know, but the one thing I will say, as we've discussed in many seasons and why we have so many of them, and probably why I'm, you know, your partner in all of this, is that how we approach our relationships, how we engage in them, and how we treat others does define our 5D lives. Relationships are really fucking important.
Yeah. I mean, 5D is completely relational. So there's no getting away from it. But it's interesting how much we have to evolve and grow within and without them to be able to really be in them from a more conscious place.
And it's really allowing people to show up as they are.
Yes.
And then also but allowing yourself to show up as you are, no judgment. That is how you really relate.
Yeah. And it's okay. It's also okay to process. When I said that we don't have to sort of constantly, as you said, we don't have to constantly assess or come at it from, you know, from this place of evaluating all the time, step by step. Am I being decisive in this place, etc.? But it doesn't hurt to have a friend to talk it out with. I just want to be able to say that. We don't, in this quest to be free and judgment free and do whatever we want, it's definitely okay to have a good sounding board as well. Not so that they can tell us if we're being reasonable or not, but sometimes I need to be able to process.
The one thing when it comes to magic and relationships that I have learnt and that we've always said is that you cannot control the will of another, just as much as you cannot control your own. And we always forget that. We try and control our own wills. This is what it should look like. This is what I need to be like. This is how I need to turn up. This is what I need to say, or this is how we need to move on to the next chapter. Whatever it is, we're trying to control ourselves and we're trying to control the other person. And what we miss, I believe, is the magic, where two people show up as themselves. Yeah. And what happens then?
And we need to be able to give room for that. Magical beings are big beings. We take up a lot of space energetically compared to those who are not. We don't suck up all the oxygen in a room, but to be able to embody all that power that is required to be a magical being can give you a lot of presence. And as you said, humility allows you to not take up all that space because you acknowledge that even if a person isn't aware that they are magical, we are all one, and therefore they deserve to have just as much space. So when we are coming into that space of I'm a magical being, my friends are magical beings, we're all just kind of sharing this wonderful energy and we're so aware, or not, you know, because we just continue to live our lives, we have to really ask ourselves, are we limiting ourselves in our power? Are we hiding our magical selves around certain people? So when we're really evaluating our relationships, which is it's going to be up through 2025, how our relationships are going are going to be really up for us.
When you talk about making space for the other person, it's not like I'm going to be small so that or I'm going to minimize my power so they feel more powerful. It's there's space for you to be powerful and for me to be powerful in this relationship.
And I'm going to show you by being my most powerful self. So that way you can give yourself permission to do the same. Because in our karmic reality, we'll shrink ourselves. We'll do it so we can be like, or to feel validated, or somebody will pick us, or we've just been kind of told it's not, you're too much. But when we are our most magical selves in any relationship, being at our fullest power will always give permission for the other person to do the same. Thank you for listening. For more information, articles, and inspiration, find us at karmasmybitch.com and at karmasmybitch.insta.
And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review.